Well, hello, everyone. My name is Shawn Langwell. I am the host of the Dare to Be Great, Dare to Be You podcast. I have a very special guest with us today, Stephanie uh, St. Clair, who is just a phenomenal helper of people. And let's tell you a little bit about what this show is and why I am doing it and what its main intention is. You know, I'm an author. I'm an inspirational speaker. I've worked with a lot of people in recovery as a coach and as a business consultant for over 3 decades. And over the course of this time, what I found is there's a lot of people that don't believe enough in themselves. They lack self-esteem. They lack self-confidence. And one of the recent books that I wrote, there's 85% of the people suffer from some form of low self-esteem. I purposely invited Stephanie here today because she helps people, in particular women over 40, and she's going to share some of her own experience, strength, and hope in that regard. This show is in its infancy, so bear with us, have grace, have patience. This could be one of the first few episodes, but let's go ahead and get started, and we will kick it off with a little brief bio about Stephanie. Stephanie's a teacher, a coach, a self-proclaimed self-love Sherpa specializing in helping women over 40 take control of their negative thoughts and manage emotional overwhelm so they can eliminate shame, go after what they want without guilt, be authentic in every relationship, and live in partnership with spirit. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Sean. Really excited to be here.
Me too. And this is a conversation. We're going to be here for about 45 minutes to an hour. And I like to have my guests start off just telling us a little bit about either where you're at today or what's brought you to this point as we approach the Thanksgiving holiday in 2023, coming out of the pandemic. Where are you at and how did you get here?
I love that. That's I got here because of a lot of suffering. My story is not even probably is very similar to, I'm sure, many people who hear this that's I think one of the great things that we learn in recovery is that our stories are not special. I grew up in a alcoholic, abusive, dysfunctional, obviously with that large word on every level, father and codependent mom. And so I grew up with a ton of anxiety, fear, shame, a complete warping of my sense of self. And I struggled through that childhood and always had this sense that simultaneously that something was especially wrong with me and especially wrong with my family, but I couldn't really put my finger on what it was. I didn't have the language for it. It was just this knowing. And also simultaneously having a sense that there was something bigger than me. There was something out there around me, above me, something that had the answer. And so I spent most of my life, once I, with various pitfalls along the way, really following that call and following that something that I couldn't put my name on or put a name to. And I obviously the word that I have for it now is God, source, spirit, universe, divine intelligence, whatever. But there was just always something inside me that there was a light inside me that wouldn't die, no matter what I contended with. And ultimately, I hit a lot of bottoms. I hit a lot of emotional rock bottoms in my life, struggled with alcohol for a number of years, lost my twin sister to cancer at 39, and a number of other struggles. And at some point, I actually, as points compounded and experiences compounded, I got to the place where I realized that I needed to make some really major changes. And I really came to a point of feeling like I needed to dismantle everything that I believed about who I was, how life worked, what this is all about, and create something new. And once I kind of hit that bottom and made that choice, my world kind of opened up, and I found teachers, and I found mentors, and I found ancient teachings, and I found fellowship programs, and I once my heart opened up to change,
Yeah, and let's
things started
explore.
flooding in.
Yeah, and let's
Yeah.
explore that a little. And I
Yeah.
coming back from a dentist appointment this morning, I was like, what else could I ask? And what you just touched on there, not every certain a lot of people love to just read and try and satiate their appetite with self-help books. Personally, I can't
Hmm.
stand the phrase self-help. I think it's personal development, it's self-improvement, and
Yeah.
it's not all about self. But if you could share what some of those early or some of who those early teachers were and other resources that really had an impact on you, because
Hmm.
in a way, whether they're authors you know or classes you attended, we are all connected. And I'm touching on that now. We'll dive deeper into it. It's all on your webpage. I think we both share that sense of connection with inner spirit versus external needs. But
Hmm.
that quest for every individual is a journey that is unique to each person. So, what was part of your seeking and searching in terms of trying to find these things? And what were the ones that stuck with you that have kind of shaped who you are and what you're doing today?
Hmm. Oh, that's a great question. I dove into trying to understand everything I could about the human development, about how personalities are formed, about how our sense of self is created from a psychological level. So
Mhm.
I read a lot of Jung, I read a lot of Freud and Adler and Marion Woodward, and some of these larger names in the psychological field, just to understand, how does a human come to be a human? How do we what are the mechanisms? And I think that's one thing that I think is so essential, that I find, kind of like you were talking about earlier about the frustrations of, like, in terms of self-help, because as human beings, the way that we're formed, kind of like, I call it humaning 101, like how we take on a personality, what roles attachment play in our sense of self, what role the drive to survive plays in who we become out in the world. These are the basic mechanics that are our birthright, and these are not things that are easily and readily taught. These are not part of our general education. So I think that there are so many great minds just from kind of the classics of the psychological realm, where that's where I started, and where there's so many gems to mine there. So
Mhm.
that's kind of, again, kind of understanding the basic building blocks of what creates a human personality, because whatever my personality is, that's who I believe myself to be, and that's going to be the lens through which I see my reality and through which I create my reality. So
And,
understanding
and
that,
in that
yeah,
sense, too, that's where a lot of our identity is formed. And there's been a
yeah,
talk about the identity and attachment to certain behaviors, mechanisms, psychological past experiences, responses, things of that nature. And we attach our identity to these things. And the easiest example is really our job, our work, our income, where we
yeah,
live, the
yeah,
status, all this. And we're going there, continue on this train of thought, but um, the external is not the solution. We'll just park that there for
right.
come back to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that the external is definitely not the solution, and yet we the external is important, in that we need everyone around us, we
Mhm.
need the environment around us to be the kind of the wall against which we kind of bounce our balls of ideas about what is true for me, who am I, things like that. So there is this exchange. But I think that, going back to what you said, one of the things that it was really helpful for me was starting to think about myself in duality, starting to think about myself as a human animal and as a spiritual being. I am the spiritual being having the human experience, right? And there is that cliched saying, but it's cliche, I think, because it's so true, right?
Cliches usually are true. I
They
mean, no
usually
matter
are
how
true,
trite they may
right?
be.
Exactly. But that was something else that helped me too, is once I started understanding, kind of, again, the humaning 101 aspect of it, personality development and all that, and started to be able to identify, okay, there are certain things that are part of my human package, for lack of a better term, that have a way in which they're done. I mean, our humanity, our human animal nature is pretty predictable. There's certain ways that it works. And you once you start to learn some of these basics, you can start to predict how you're going to respond to a certain situation, what it's going to feel like, what you're going to think when that happens. And you can find the ability to not only predict how you're going to respond to certain situations, but obviously once I can predict it, I can start to be proactive about, this is going to happen, I want to approach it in this other way. But I can't do that.
What you're talking about is pattern recognition.
Yes.
That awareness that ties into self-awareness, which most of us, I shouldn't say most of us, but a lot of people think they're incredibly self-aware when they really aren't. There's books that have written about this, and that's part of our own internal bias. But what you're referring to is this openness and identification of the patterns of our behavior, our thoughts, our actions, and our behavior, to try and rein it in and look at it from a different perspective. You talked about the duality, right?
Yeah. And I think that when we start to go down that road of self-awareness, which is essential, and I can recognize that my human nature has these different patterns that are going to play out, and I can understand and learn what those patterns are, but also recognizing that if it's within the realm of my humanity and my human nature aspect, which all these patterns are, that I have to remind myself that everything behind that is going to be a drive to survive.
Yes.
It is going to be survival based, keeping my human body, machine, whatever, animal, whatever you want to call it, keeping this alive. And that's the priority. That's what's driving the bulk of our thoughts, the bulk of our behaviors, even while we can't on the initial, cusp of it, understand that that's really what's happening. That's what's driving 99% of it. And that will always be what happens if I'm only identifying as this human animal and with my human nature. And then there's the aspect of my spirit. And this is where it's also confusing, because the human nature and the human animal is also spirit, a denser, heavier, manifestation of it. Spirit is all that there is, and it's everything. And also there's my spiritual aspect, which is here for the experience, which is here for the evolution, which is here. And that part of me actually isn't preoccupied with the goods and the bads and the rights and the wrongs and the likes and the dislikes and the judgments and the opinions. That part of me is here for all of it, for the purpose of expansion and evolution. And my human nature is the mechanism by which I get to have this three-dimensional experience. And so if I can start by kind of entertaining, which I think that's the hardest part, is just daring to, for a period of time, daring to be willing to believe that maybe it's something other than what I have thought it's been. Like once you open your brain to that.
Yeah, and let's pause there and let that sink in, because I don't want people to miss it. And go ahead and repeat it, because it's if you can remember it, it's really, really, really important. So
oh gosh, if I can't remember. Oh, the daring, you mean the daring to believe something new.
Yeah, daring and the willingness to be open and curious enough to explore things and run it through this filter where, I mean, you talked about the survival mechanism, and that's just human nature. It's the barest bones of Maslow talked about, and almost everyone who's listened to this has heard of Maslow's hierarchy. On the survival modes, and it depends on what frame of mind you're looking at or what theoretical model, but the bottom line is it's survival first, and everything still comes back to that baseline survival. And then there's the progression and the personal growth and the ascension or the enlightenment or whatever it is, that terms that you want to use. But it starts with a curiosity and an openness and a willingness to discern the difference between things that are helpful to you and or harmful. So that's part of the challenge that people in exploring these things have, is they don't know what to believe, right? It creates confusion.
Yeah. And that is hard, because, we are wired from that survival drive. We are wired to look to the external for validation of reality. We are wired to look outside ourselves for the answers. And there's there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that that's one of the big aspects of this too, is that I think once one starts kind of down this road of recovery or spiritual awakening, for as another way I like to call it, is there can be a lot of sense of shame around how I'm supposed to do things, or I should be this way, or I shouldn't be this way, or I should try to heal myself in this particular fashion. And that is the tricky contradiction of the journey, I think, is that on the one hand, ultimately, we are here to create our own reality based on what spirit is calling us to. We are here to be the creator. We are here as creator in a form. But before we can really create from our own kind of internal drive, or our own kind of personal GPS, our spiritual calling or whatever, before we can actually trust ourselves to, number one, be able to hear that, number two, feel empowered to go and take action for that, we actually do have to look outside of ourselves for a period of time to actually be able to get to take in those new ideas that we've opened our minds up to, so that it can come in and go, does that resonate? Does that not resonate? And what do I take? Like we say in the rooms, it's like, take what works and leave the rest. What do I feel is a match for what I'm here, what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, and what can I just leave? And how do I alchemize all these different pieces from these different people and ideas and teachings that have come in now that I've opened myself up to it? And from all those things, then that's something new, I think, is created, because it's what we take in, it's what we leave behind, that kind of gets congealed with our own unique nature that we arrive here with.
And it's all what you're talking about too, is just part of the human evolution and existence as a human, as a spiritual being, but as well as a human being, is this perpetual innovation. And really what you're talking about is synthesis. It's synthesizing all these inputs from outside of us, interpersonal relationships, behaviors, our own. And it's like this huge dynamic. I mean, if you're going to visualize this for those that are listening, it's like this huge giant ball that's pulsating. And at the core of that ball is our essence. And there's a lot of virtually every spiritual book that I've read, whether it's the Bible or stuff, Buddhism, recovery, higher power, universe, there's this constant thread that always comes back to a sphere, if you will. And what sits at the center of that sphere? It's our essence, it's our beingness, it's our oneness. And it sounds like I may be going off on a little tangent woo-woo, but it's not. What you're talking about is this constant filter, almost like pinging. If you're going to test the speed of the internet, you're pinging something out there to see how fast it comes back to you. And once you start to align yourself with this mindset, if you will, and paying attention and increasing your awareness, you start to assimilate and synthesize a lot more input much more quickly, because, like you said, it is an identification of external, but it's always coming back to us, and that's never going to change. There's nothing wrong with certain self-care. There's nothing wrong with being selfish with our own time. In fact, we're going to change gears in a second, because I want you to share with the listeners some of the self-care tips and ideas that you have when you're coaching various women who are struggling with these self-esteem issues. And it's not just women. You specialize in helping women over 40. I'm focusing along those same lines of working with people on all spectrums, and predominantly a lot of it happens to be in recovery, because I've got decades of experience there. But let's I totally lost my train of thought, but let's go back to let's take this here. You're working with a new client. What is it that you're looking for, and how are you using? Let's just make it tangible. What kind of suggestions are you making for these women to help them expand their own consciousness and or feel better about themselves, to lack of a better term, learn to love themselves, really?
Yeah. And it's also, because it's a relearning to love themselves. I mean, when what you're talking about before, about that center, that kind of pulsating center, I mean, it's our essence. And I think ultimately, again, back to the cliches that are always true, it's love, right? It's love. And it's not love just in that romantic sense that we get kind of bombarded with in our culture, but love is life. I mean, love, life, expansion, it is that energetic sense. And so it's in relearning to reconnect and identify with that with that core that is inside of us, that is that driver of survival and thriving and expansion. With the one of the critical things that I do with my clients is, they typically will come to me and there's this laundry list that they have of behaviors that they play out that are self-sabotaging, and that they know in themselves that it's not how they want to show up. They know that it doesn't work out well. They know that it's a problem. And they believe that if I can just get rid of these behaviors, these problems will be gone, and then I can just be happy and I can be empowered and free and all the things that we all want to experience as a baseline. And the way that they have done it thus far is there's just a lot of effort. It's a lot of resistance of these behaviors. And in that resistance, it's so much judgment, it's so much criticism. And then when they play these behaviors out, not understanding that these behaviors are hardwired in them as protection devices, as survival mechanisms that have been evolving for millennia, that are part of why our species is still around.
And it is a safety mechanism.
Yeah.
And all behavior is really about protecting ourselves. It goes back, you talked about at the beginning of the show. It's avoiding pain and moving towards pleasure. And it's some combination of human behavior, which are the core base rudimentary elements. There's either pain or pleasure, and that may be, but it's the honest to God's truth. Just look at our behavior and what we like and what we don't like.
Yep, exactly. So they show up, with all of these ideas and judgments around these behaviors, and they think that these behaviors are them, because there's still this complete identification with the human animal, and that aspect of duality is not really founded yet. And I get to that with them. But the biggest thing is educating them about and helping them identify, guiding them to identify how this particular behavior that's causing them so much trouble right now, whether it's the people pleasing or the codependency or the, losing their shit on their kids after a long day and then feeling horrible about whatever, all of these shame-inducing behaviors, is guiding them to understand how that behavior has been of service to them, because it ultimately, everything we do serves a need.
It does. And
everything we do
from recovery too. It's like recovery, drugs and alcohol worked for me for a long time until they stopped working. Verbal abuse, other kinds of abuse, whatever manifestations that happen, worked until it becomes a problem, right?
Yeah, because we get so stuck on identifying with those behaviors that we think if we stop those behaviors, we will cease to exist. Like, who are we going to be without that? What's life going to be like without that? Because we're still identifying with just that part. But so that is a huge aspect of it, is understanding that, being open to the daring to believe that everything that we do serves a valid purpose.
Yes.
A valid purpose. So can I dig in and find out and identify what part of me has that need, and entertain the notion that actually there might be other ways to get that need met. And that, most of all, shame and criticism and self-judgment and self-punishment are never the answer. Never the answer. The only answer is self-compassion, period. Hard stop.
And we also have this tendency, just because it's worked and that's what's comfortable for us. And it, obviously I'm not a woman, but I understand the shame, blame, guilt, doubt, fear, insecurity game, because I'm a recovering alcoholic of 37 years. I'd lived and breathed that for a whopping 5 years before I got sober at 22. So it works, but there are other ways out there, right? So
Yes, it's that white knuckling, right? It's
God.
that white knuckling of like, okay, and it's that's such an outrageous idea for us initially, that, oh my gosh, the solution is actually love. The solution is actually self-compassion. That's it, because anything else in that just perpetuates the cycle.
So let's unpack that a little bit more. I hate that word unpack, but let's look into it a little bit more. from your perspective of working with clients for as long as you have, how does that manifest it? And what are some tangible, specific tools that you can use to help guide people who are accustomed to the old habits, the white knuckling? I call it the "I got this" syndrome. And
Oh, I love
you know,
that.
as coaches and personal
Yeah.
trainers, you want to be encouraging and all that, and you got this, you got this. But when it's internalized and you think you got it, I heard a long time ago, 30 plus years ago, a guy looked me in the face and said, "Kid, you ain't got shit." Tough love, but it's the truth. So
Yeah,
in absence of
totally.
that, when you remove something else, you have to replace it with something else that's
Yes.
healthier. And that is the resistance you talked about. How do you make this transition to feel safe and comfortable, to let go of what has been your go-to for so long? And what are some of those things and mechanisms that you use to help guide people without giving a free therapy session or a
Hmm.
session
Yeah.
here? But I want the listeners to know, because you've been doing this a long time and you help
Hmm.
people and people are following you. So let's let them know what they can expect.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one tool that, my work is really founded on three kind of pillars. And if these pillars once you kind of get these pillars in place, everything that we're wanting is there: the self-love, the self-confidence, all of the good stuff, all the things
Mhm.
that we're really wanting to live from. And those pillars are self-awareness, self-compassion, and self-agency. And self-agency is just it's a gentler way of saying self-responsibility.
Mhm.
Right. So from those two things, and the self-awareness is really kind of that first pillar that has to be built. I have to really understand why, and really spend some time kind of as a scientist in my own life to observe myself. Why do I do the thing? Wow, this happened and this happened. Can I start to look for those patterns and start having that pattern recognition? And then what will happen, one of the easiest tools, but it's also one of the most effective that I found, is something that I call AVIS. And it has to do with how once we identify, okay, there's this part of me that likes to self-sabotage in whatever way, shape, or form, and I keep doing it. I keep telling myself that I need to stop it, and I keep thinking myself into it. I
Mhm.
keep, whatever. But oftentimes, what we don't realize initially is that we treat ourselves in the same way that we were treated as kids. So there are so many things that we're missing for most of us about how to relate to our own feelings and how to relate to our own thoughts. And so we will end up, when we start to kind of pay attention to ourselves and trying to interact with ourselves to make these changes, our immediate go-to is just to treat ourselves the way that we were treated as kids. So AVIS is a little acronym that I came up with that I give my clients. And the first is that, let's say, for example, you lost. Here's a great example. I was talking to a client the other day, and she found herself driving at night, coming back from something she didn't want to do. And she found herself just spinning for like an hour and a half as she's driving home, just in these big feelings of resentment and anger and hopelessness and helplessness, and just this huge activation and just take over, which I
Mhm.
think many of us who are listening to this podcast can go, aha, I know what you're talking about,
Yep.
where you're just like in the well, you are just
Yep.
consumed. And so what we talked about was that, number one, we want to acknowledge that feeling. Okay, what am I feeling? Here I am driving in the dark and the rain. I'm feeling, okay, acknowledge what I'm feeling. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling resentful. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling tightness in my chest. Can I turn all of my attention to my experience instead of running from it? Let me give it all of my attention and acknowledge as many feelings, whether it's, somatic experiences or just emotions that I can name. Acknowledge, all the way through.
Mhm.
Because there's a part of us that is having that intense experience of overwhelm, and then there's the parts of us that are observing it. So just first and foremost, once I give all my attention to what I'm feeling and start naming everything I can, I've immediately put myself into an observer position,
Yes.
and that's essential. So once I've acknowledged everything, Then there's the V of the AVIS, which is the validation. Can I look at and review all of those things that I've acknowledged? Can I validate why that makes sense? Yeah, it makes sense. Sure, you're angry. Yeah, you're angry because this isn't what you wanted to do tonight. You are scared because it's dark and raining out. You are also scared because there's other things going on. Whatever it is, complete validation of the experience.
Okay.
Not fixing it, not, well, we shouldn't feel that way, not bypassing it, because that's usually what happens we never get past the acknowledgement, most of us. We'll acknowledge all of it, and then we'll go right into fixing it. We'll go right into judging it. We'll go right into trying to make it something else, because 9 times out of 10, that's how we were raised. That's how it was modeled to us when we were having hard or negative emotions.
And to that end, because I don't want to miss this point, validation, acknowledgement, identification of the problem in my 5-step process from this last book I wrote, 10 Seconds of Wholeness. It's the same similar scenario of identification of the problem or opportunity, acknowledging the problem, validating it, but along those lines, also not trying to deny it or hide, run from it, which is the other part that a lot of us tend to want to do, avoidance of pain. And what you're talking about by validating it, and there's tons of books out there. I just got through reading one of the books on the Enneagram. It's just stepping and embracing this as feelings are normal. Feelings are normal.
Yes.
It's okay. Breathe. You're not going to die, right?
Right.
Sit
it's not an emergency.
So
yeah, it's not an emergency, and it's not going to die. And again, same thing. Maybe not most of us, very many of us, we were messaged that some emotions that we experienced were safe and some weren't, because some emotions we would have and we would express them, which is our natural way of being, and they were shut down, they were ignored, they were minimized, they were shamed, or we might have even gotten physically abused because of these emotions. So we get to adulthood, and there is just this vast array of emotions and feelings that our human system says not safe, don't feel it, fix it, whatever case it is, because we haven't actually taught our nervous system that those things won't kill us, because that's literally what it would feel like on a deep subconscious level for us as a kid.
And I want to interject here, because I just said something and I'm not going to edit it out. But for those of you that are in a serious anxious state, or you have, compromising mental health issues, seek professional help. When I say you're not going to die from it, we're talking about some of the self-imposed patterns of conditioned responses as it relates to our upbringing that are part of who we have become as human beings. So I just want to make that 100% clear, and I'm sure you'd concur with that stuff.
Absolutely.
If you're in a dire state where you're not healthy, ask for help. Dial 911.
Completely. Yes. Thank you for saying that, because that's huge. So getting back on this, so it's, acknowledge, it's validate, and then it's identify. Then it's the I is identify. And what we're talking about here is identifying what the need is. Okay, you're feeling this, that makes complete sense. What is it that you need right now? And we're still talking to ourselves as if we're talking to someone else. I'm not saying, what do I need right now? I'm saying, what do you need right now? Because I am still in that observer position. I'm still dealing with a part of myself. Not all of me is freaking out in this moment. It's a part of me. It's a very strong, lots of feeling part of me, but it's not the totality of who I am. There's still the me that's identified. So can that part of me ask, what is it that you need right now? And wait and give time to listen.
Be honest with yourself about that too. But you just said, wait, that's where some of us, I'm an incredibly impatient person. I want to do it now. And that's, as a guy, most guys, if you're listening, when women or significant others in your life say they have a problem where it's not our job to fix it. I'm still learning that one. So all the women listeners here are going to get a kick out of this. It's a dude on the podcast. Don't fix it.
Don't fix
anyway,
it.
It's the truth. Identify it. There's a need. It doesn't need that it needs to be fixed right now. Just identify it and sit with it.
Right. And and when we identify it, it could be any number of things. And that's one of the other things I tell my clients too, is 9 times out of 10, don't expect that when you receive the message of what the need is, don't expect that it's going to be some big I need to change my whole life and we need to go get a new job and we need to leave it. A lot of times it's like, I need to sit down for 5 minutes, or I need to take a shower, or I need to go for a walk, or I need a hug. Like, because it's the parts of ourselves that are activated like that take us down that valley. 9 times out of 10, they're very young parts. They're not looking for a higher level adult solution to the issue. 9 times out of 10, they're just trying to be made to feel safe.
That's deep what you just said, Stephanie, because it's not, it aligns with finding the child within, but it's actually, there's a lot of truth to that, because these patterns and behaviors, from what I've read and what you've probably studied as well, are back to our core memories and or traumas of our youth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of, in that first initial step, which I do believe is the hardest, is opening ourselves up to believe that what we believe isn't the whole truth and that there's more to it. And part of it is that we can dare to believe that our baseline, the true essence, like you were talking about earlier, our baseline, that self energy that we talk about, internal family systems, or that inner loving parent that we talk about in inner child healing work or soul, spirit, whatever, that part of us is untouchable by anything in this world. There's nothing in this world that can impact that or change it or affect it. And that part of us is always in compassion. It's always in clarity. It's always in confidence. It's always connected to source and has the answers for us. It is immovable. Like it is pristine and perfect. And what we can do, and it's a wild idea, but it's not any wilder than us believing that beating ourselves up is the solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
The wild idea is that if I find myself, once I've actually, and this is kind of the initial work of inner child healing, which is something that isn't understood very much at first, is that before we can start to do this deeper level work, we actually do need to spend time getting consciously connected to this essence part of us.
Yes.
And because that becomes that stable anchor from which we start to see things. So it is absolutely reasonable for me to identify with that essence, that pure perfection, that confidence, that connected to source part of me that is untouched by everything in this world. And then anytime I am not in that energy, I'm activated, I'm in self-judgment, I'm in self-sabotage, anything that is not in that energy, that tells me right away that a survival mechanism has been activated. And I will immediately assume that if I'm out of my self energy, my loving parent energy, spirit energy, whatever, then that means something has been activated. It's a younger part. It's a part that is ignorant to the whole picture. And that part needs to be served love and understanding and validation, and needs to be treated as such.
And one of the things, especially in early recovery, because, when I stopped drinking, I was left with all these feelings that I was trying to
Yeah,
number
right.
one was resentment. And, that's part of when you get, I don't know if it's spoiler alert with the book you're reading, Beyond Recovery, but that it is a journey of grace, love, and forgiveness. And it was not just for my father, who left when I was 12. It was about for forgiving myself, for letting go of some of these things that I carried with me for so long. And it's over time, what you're talking about here is, it doesn't have to be this shame thing of, you're not going to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes, but come back to this place of grace. But also, what I hear you talking about with your clients is learning to hit the pause button. When you recognize these behaviors started to crop up, and the manifestations, whatever those are for individuals, to say, hey, acknowledge it, take a step back, identify, what was it? Acknowledge, validate, and identify. And those three steps, and we're going to get to the fourth one in a second. But that process, folks, it takes time. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a guy who's experienced a lot of this stuff firsthand and heard thousands and thousands and thousands of stories. So by all intents and purposes, I'm an expert. So you can take my word for it. Human behavior. I know what the hell this is all about. And it's sad, but there are solutions. And women like Stephanie and others out there are there to help you, guide you through this process, which is confusing, as if go back to your roots as a child, right? and to be
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable enough to say, I need some help, which is part of that
Mm-hmm.
acknowledgement step.
Yeah. Yes.
To let go of the pride that I have to have it all together, but to say, hey, I need help. And
Mm-hmm.
as coaches and teachers and spiritual practitioners, our fiduciary responsibility to our clients is to extend our own hand to say, I'm here to help you.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, and that really ties into that fourth word, which is serving. Once I've identified, I acknowledged, I've validated, I've identified the need, and then I'm serving that need. And it really ties back to what you were talking about, is that, in those moments, sometimes that part of me is going to say, I need to take a nap.
Mm-hmm.
And I might be in the middle of midway through the day and I'm in meetings and I can't serve that need right then. But as speaking to this part of me that's activated as if it was a 7-year-old version of me or a 5-year-old version of me, just like with my own children, I'm not going to make a promise to them that I can't keep. I have to tell that part of myself, okay, I hear you. You need a nap. Of course you do. It makes so much sense. I can't give you a nap right now, but after I do X, Y, and Z, we will go home and we will lay down for 10 minutes. Okay. And then following up on that. And that's, kind of circling it back to what you're asking about earlier about the self-care. That's self-care, is keeping my word to myself. Once
Mm-hmm.
I've identified what I need and I don't have any judgment on what that need is, then can I practice self-care by committing to giving myself that. And I think that's quite a process too, because we're all so busy. We all have so many obligations and responsibilities, and we exist in a culture that is completely dysfunctional and unhealthy, and the drive, and go, and ambition and hustle and all that. And keep up with these external things that we think will make us feel better about ourselves. And that takes a lot of effort. Is can I start to understand and also be able to track that when I don't take the time to give myself that thing that I need, that 10-minute nap on a Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when God knows I've got so many things that I need to be
Mm-hmm.
doing or should be doing. If I don't do that, if I do not follow through to myself on that need that I've identified, there will be hell to pay.
Yeah.
That part of me will resent me more, will not trust me more, and will act out more. So it's about starting to also recognize that every time we dare to break pattern and serve that need that we've identified, we actually are, even in the moment, it might not seem like it's like earth shaking and life changing, but it actually is, because it's changing internally how a part of myself sees me and trusts me or doesn't trust me. And the less trust I have within myself, the more that my parts feel like they have to protect themselves, and the more they're going to act out.
And this goes back to, I mean, I'm sure you've done a fair amount of research on neuroplasticity and the
Yep.
ability to change the synapses of our brains and the full neural pathways and the amount of time and energy it takes. But it starts with single acts and building
Yeah.
those one after another. And it doesn't happen overnight. I read
Mm-hmm.
something recently that it's an average of 400 to 600 repetitions just to change the neural pathways in terms of the synapses of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes over 10,000 repetitions before that entire thought pattern and behavioral pattern is rewired. But
Mm-hmm.
the great news, what you're suggesting, is that it's possible. So each time these situations present themselves and you're being true to serving yourself and taking a nap or whatever it is to promote self-care, I use the term confidence bank,
I
and
like that.
came up with my last book. I may have heard it at a talk sometime, but I included in there. And what I do, I'm just going to share this briefly. It may be helpful to you
Mm-hmm.
listeners. Is I I'm a pretty outgoing guy, and I have a tendency to be overconfident in times to the point of cockiness. But when the wheels come off the proverbial cart, I go back to my youth where everything's going bad. I go back to a 12-year-old where I'm kicking and crying and screaming because my dad took off. I go back there in a second.
Yeah.
Over time, I've learned to recognize that and get back into the center that you were talking about faster. So what I
Mm-hmm.
do is on my phone, if everybody has any type of a digital device, different things that happen throughout the day. It's just a mini journal. It may be something of a compliment that somebody put on Facebook.
Yeah.
When I was feeling shitty, somebody gave me a compliment. I do a screenshot and throw it in a folder that's called Confidence Bank.
Yep.
This is a
Yep.
practical, tangible tool anybody can do. It's not copyrighted. I don't care about any of that. It's a
Mm-hmm.
tool that helps you for those times when you're feeling like shit. You're having a bad day. I jokingly say we all have bad hair days. All of
Mm-hmm.
us, even Guy. I mean, today I admit it, your freaking haircut. This is an audio thing because whatever, I can look like whatever I want to. But um, the point is, there's two sides to that, and building and perpetuating this positivity to get back into self-care is really a habit, right, Stephanie?
It's absolutely a habit. And I think what's interesting about habits, habits, we could talk for a long time about how they fit within like the humaning 101 experience of, kind of with the parts that habit making plays in our survival, so on and so forth. But I think the other aspect of habit creation that isn't talked about enough is that it truly is an act of faith.
Mm-hmm.
When I show up and I do that thing differently, even though in the back of my mind I go, okay, it's not going to happen, it's not going to change things permanently, right now, or I want to, lose 10 pounds. And so you don't just go to the gym the one time and expect it to be different, but you act on faith and trust that if you just keep showing up, you just keep showing up, you just keep coming back, right? That it does change. And I think what's so cool about it is that when you let go to creating habits and really acting on faith, which is also that part of that whole, like, act as if, or fake it till you make it, all of that whole concept is that when you do that, what's interesting is that you are really approaching your life as if it's a piece of art.
I love that.
It's as if it is okay, there's just this one stroke on the canvas right now, the rest of it's not done yet, but over time it's going to end with some new thing that wasn't there
Mhm.
before, and that's the artistic process. And that is it's a nice, for myself, that makes habit change, that makes it more interesting, and it makes it more beautiful, and it makes it more of a pleasurable experience when I can look at it as like, well, this is my life. I want my life to feel like a piece of art. And when we're making art of any kind, the process is what's magical.
It is, and all personal growth really is a process. And I want to touch briefly on that, and then I want to jump into an exchange that you and I had on Facebook that was
Mm-hmm.
really what precipitated me reaching out to you to say, you know what, I got to get you on this show.
Mm-hmm.
And that is I totally lost my train of thought. I was going one way and then it's like it happens. I mean,
It happens.
that
We were talking
there's
about
just
art, we were talking about faith, we were talking about habits, we were talking about neuroplasticity.
habits. I mean, I totally forgot what I was going to say other
That's
than the
okay.
fact that habits can be changed. Neuroplasticity, we are.
Absolutely.
Where I was going is you talked about letting go, and we're going to use this as a segue into
Mm,
spirituality because
yeah, love it.
we talked briefly about the white knuckling and holding on, and I think that this the patterns that so many people have, and there's been tons of psychological studies and research done on our need to feel in control,
Yeah.
and the act, and then that word control is powerful because we what happens for a lot of us that have come from a broken home or abusive situations is there's trauma attached to it, and to protect ourselves we want to create this bubble. And because our world is so fragile, oftentimes, and I'm speaking from personal experience, I
Hmm.
don't let people in. I have walls. I have this walled garden of who I am to let people truly in because there's a deep seated fear of me being vulnerable enough that I'm going to be hurt. It
Yeah.
impacts my relationships, whether they're, romantic or otherwise. It has this propensity to keep me locked in. And what you're
Hmm.
talking about by letting go is what's scary for a lot of people. It requires this vulnerability to open up. And the process of letting go, even when you don't know, is scary.
Yeah.
You and I can probably talk on a whole nother show. Maybe we'll do it this time.
Yeah.
You posted something on November 12th of this year. How do you define spirituality?
Mm-hmm.
Why do some people call spiritual stuff woo-woo in a negative way? I
Mm-hmm.
printed out the whole post here, but I know it's fresh and probably near and dear on your heart. And
Yeah.
really, let's talk a little bit about what that means and help people understand. It took me a long time. I stayed away from recovery the very first meeting I went in because I heard the word God and it scared the crap out of me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want nothing to do with it. And
Mm-hmm.
lo and behold, I'm doing exactly what we talked about here. I'm like, I'll show you, I got this. And I went back out there and tried to get it on my own. And guess what? It hurt too
Yeah.
bad. It came crawling back like a cat with dog with the tail between his legs and said,
Oh
I need help.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
those words, the magic
Yeah.
words for any coach, for any therapist, for any psychiatrist, psychologist, the magic words for people who are hurting that can actually change your life are three words. Please help me.
Yes. 1000%. 1000%. I also love the phrase, it's your best thinking that got you here.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites too. Um, yeah, I mean, but we're talking about kind of spirituality and letting go and how scary that is, and how essential it is to have support.
Yes.
It's impossible to do this by yourself.
Yeah.
And for any number of reasons. I mean, just right off the cuff, I discussed this in a different post actually, is this idea that if we were never modeled what it looks like to validate ourselves, if we were never shown by anyone what it looks like to give ourselves to what forgiveness looks like, or what appreciation looks like, we literally don't know how to give ourselves that if we weren't shown that. So if we didn't get that as a kid, whether from our immediate, our moms and dads, or someone consistently in our family of origin or extended network, we end up having to piece it together from various places. And because of the way our brains develop, to add insult to injury to that, we can end up receiving messages that appreciation looks like sarcasm, and that's how you do it. And any number of really distorted messaging around what something really looks like. And so we'll go out into the world and give ourselves that, give other people that, and then wonder why we don't have anyone who's close to us, or why nobody really wants to be our friends, right? For just one example.
And that goes back to the S and the Avis model. It's about service. It's service to yourself, but also that could be twisted to say service to others without being people pleasing or codependency, which is another separate show, different day.
Right. But I do think that asking for help is essential, and that's and whether you're getting help from a coach or a therapist, or finding a 12-step program, or I think that, and I will say that that's one of the things that I think is so powerful about, and we don't need to go down the fellowship conversation, although that's another talk. But one of the things is that it's also not just about finding someone, but also finding someone or someone's who actually, number one, has walked the path that you've walked, from an experiential, they not just academically understanding it, but they've walked that path and they know. So there's that, but it's also someone who has the capacity to be able to listen with presence and be capable of just and we hear this word a lot in recovery, someone who can hold the space for me.
Yeah.
And knowing what that actually means, and that it doesn't mean that, what it means, what it doesn't mean. And so I absolutely agree with you that it's something that one does have to have support with. And I think, that also has to be tempered with, and this is one of the distorted thinking that I used recovery to get out of, is we often think that we're in so much pain and suffering, and somebody presents something as, here, I have this for you, I have this teaching, or I have this protocol, or I have this coaching, or whatever the case may be, and we'll go to that, and we will end up expecting that person or that thing or that protocol is going to be the end all final answer, and that once we just do this thing, then everything should be okay. And there's that understanding of that every single teacher we meet on the path is there for us for that time, because we don't stop evolving once we've healed. There's constant expansion, and that everyone you meet along the path is just for that season of your path, and that then you're going to need you're going to be called to need something new and something different, and it's just ongoing.
And that's really important. You said the word season. I was going to interject that there are seasons of life, there are
Yeah.
seasons of people, there are seasons of growth, and it's a perhaps overused metaphor, but it's also easy for us to identify. And when we find what you're talking about, people who identify and can relate to what it is that we're going through, there's an inherent trust that happens. And that's part of that is not part, that is the core crux of why 12-step programs are so successful. They're like-minded people looking for a common solution, helping each other, because there's a relatability. And you get to a place where that, going back to the acknowledgement of your Avis model, it doesn't hold as much weight or agency over you once you learn to acknowledge what these things are, and you feel safe enough to ask for help. And in so doing, it becomes, it's almost like it's like a ballet.
Yeah, it's a
It's like
dance for
dance where you're
sure.
just going like this, and you're listening
Hmm.
to the music of life, and you used art and as a canvas, but it is all art. Life is art, and back to the core of who we are. We are spiritual beings having a spiritual experience, and to deny
Hmm.
that, it doesn't matter what it is, right, Stephanie? It can
Hmm.
be any manifestation, but I purposely put, the listeners can't hear this unless I take snippets, but I've took a picture. My wife and I went out whale watching. That was her Christmas present last year.
Oh, nice.
And I got some pictures on the San Francisco Bay of the Golden Gate Bridge following gray whales and humpback whales out into the gate.
Mm.
To me, that fluidity and freedom of just being out there and watching the trails behind the boat and the whales do whale things, we're all part of this huge connected world. And
Yes.
to try and think that there's something else out there that we need to aspire to that's going to fix us, going back to what you were talking about earlier, those solutions, it's not hurry up and get this and everything's going to be well. There is no magic wand. There is no
Mm-mm.
panacea. It is a process, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Personal human development is a perpetual process from the first breath until our last.
That's right.
We understand this and don't try and feel like we have to do more, be more than we already are. We
Hmm.
come to this place where it's a lot easier
Hmm.
to just, I'm stealing the quote. You have it on your website. To quote Baba Ram Das, we are all just
Baba.
walking each other home.
Amen.
In that book,
That's
Be
right.
Here Now, if you haven't read it, it's
Yeah.
50 years old. Uh,
Yeah.
he was a Maronite. He lived
Oh,
in San
yeah.
Anselmo, and
Yeah. And
it just,
when you had asked earlier about, different teachers, I mean, Baba is, I mean, he is just, if I was to ever say I had a guru, it would be him. I mean, he was just the most beautifully human. I just love him. I mean, he is someone. I'm so grateful for technology that I can listen to his words. I can listen to his words. I can listen to Alan Watts's words. I can listen to these absolute gems of human beings. And to go back to what you're talking about whether it's finding God in a book, or whether it's finding higher power in nature, or just in these moments, or even just you know being in awe of the fact that one of this is something that kind of blew my mind, that I had forgotten as a kid. But like, the idea that if our planet was literally like 2 inches further or closer to the sun, that life would not exist. Like, that that the fact that we are alive at all, and that the sun predictably rises and sets, and that just at the perfection of physical life in the universe. I mean, if that doesn't blow your mind, there's God. Call it what you want, but
and
like,
that's what I used in the beginning
that's it.
because I didn't understand it. I didn't have a
Hmm.
religious upbringing per se. And I
Hmm.
love going out hiking just down around the corner here. There's a trail that's called
Hmm.
the Talamoin Trail that I'm referring to the video of me on the San Francisco Bay. There's tons of trails, and being out in nature and watching the change of the seasons and life and rebirth and death and seeds and fire and all that, how can you not believe that there is some power greater than our finite
Mm-hmm.
human selves who are only here for a short amount of time, just get
Yeah.
what we can
Yeah.
and survive. But
Yeah.
just talked about with Ram Dass, that's a big part of why I'm doing this podcast, Stephanie, is
Mm.
you and I are having a conversation. Who knows who's this is going to
Mm-hmm.
impact?
Yeah.
Who knows whose life it may help? And we're doing something that's going to be out there for a long time. We're memorializing a conversation about life
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and human development and spirituality. And
Yeah. Yeah.
we do this. That's why
Yeah.
I want to do this.
It is. It's so, I mean, and that's,
Mm.
and I think it ties it back to what you're talking that, we don't have to do anything. We don't have to achieve anything. We don't, I mean, just us sitting here having this conversation and being present with each other and sharing our experience, strength and hope and journeys, this goes out and it's going to be received by exactly the people who need it at exactly the right time, and it's going to give ideas and inspirations and new thoughts, and it's going to create something new. I mean, we're constantly creating, and I think that is something that unfortunately I think that we have kind of physically and proverbially beaten out of us for a long time, is that we are constantly creating and we're constantly contributing to the world around us. We are creating the world with every word, with every action. We are so powerful. And I think that is what recovery is. That is what healing is. That's what spiritual awakening is. It's returning to the truth of that we are this incredible universe that's expanding all the time and that is creating life all the time. That's
So
it.
beautiful. So we're coming up near the end here.
Mhm.
I would love for you to share just a couple tidbits and visualize this, if you would. Somebody new who just came to you as a client
Mhm.
was hurting with a particular thing. What is it that you would want to share with that one individual? And you can create whatever that particular trauma or reason for approaching you, but what word of advice would you give to people who are still out there suffering?
Uh, the gosh, there's a few, but the first thing that just really comes to my mind is that there is a solution. I don't care what it is. It does not matter how heavy you think it is, how big you think it is, how terminal this way of being that's causing you to suffer and struggle. There is a solution. There is an answer. There is a way for you to transmute and alchemize this experience. There is another side of this. And it just without a doubt, and just to keep showing up, whether it's with a coach or a therapist or whatever, do not give up on that little spark inside you that says there's something beyond this. Don't stop believing it,
I
because
love
if you keep believing it, everyone and everything that you need to help you enlarge that and to embody that more, it will show up. But you have to keep believing that it can get better. You cannot give up on that.
I love that. So let's let people know what you have going on and how they
Mhm.
can find you. I've got your website here. It's
Mhm.
Vantage Life Design. Uh actually, what is it? Is it what is
Yeah. Yeah. So my website's Vantage Life Design. And then what I have going on, I work with private clients. That's something that's ongoing. I have limited spaces for that. And I have, gosh, that's an incredible container. We really focus specifically on exactly what your goals are, and really working on whatever is getting in your way and dismantling that. And then I also have a brand new program that is the culmination of the last 7 years of working with hundreds of clients. All my tools, basically everything I got, is going into this program that is it's kicks off at the end of January 22nd, but registration will start January 8th. I do have a wait list open that people can go to now, so that they're first to know when it's open. And it's called The Breakthrough. It's everything we were never taught about how to be empowered, happy, and free. So it really focuses a lot on correcting the identity crisis that is really at the root of 99% of the things that we suffer from, and getting clear on kind of re-educating ourselves from the miseducation that we've had. A lot of foundationally, a lot of inner child work is going to be part of that program, but things like the Avis tool that I provided today and other tactical everyday actionable things that you can do to walk yourself through this process is going to be in that program. It's going to be 8 weeks. It's going to be online modules and then weekly live coaching calls every week, and then ongoing support through social media platforms. So the breakthrough is going to be live in January, and so people can get themselves on the wait list now for that.
This is awesome. This has been a delight.
It has been. Thank you so much for having me. This is great. I feel like there's so many things that we could talk about.
Well, we could, and I'll have you back.
Yeah, I'd
This
love
this
that.
is the inaugural. This might be one of the first episodes that I launch because you've got something that's incredibly timely. And I'll look at the recording here, but thank you. This is
Oh,
a
thank
great
you.
example of not knowing somebody, but seeing their public presence without really knowing somebody, and trusting your gut to follow through with something, because you just never know, folks, where it's going to lead. I'm your host, Shawn Langwell. This has been Dare to Be Great, Dare to Be You. Thank you 1,000 times, Stephanie. And we'll look forward to having you back soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
For those that want to find me, I've got everything that I've got going on either on Facebook or on my website, www.shawnlangwell.com. I'm an author, an inspirational speaker, a consultant coach, and I'm here to serve you and help you believe you can do great things just like Stephanie.
Amen.
Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
Yay. Are we off?
Uh,